And thank you everyone for joining us today on, oh my goodness, the 20th anniversary of the publication of this document, which of course, just like looking back at your high school yearbook at all of the crazy hairdos you had, this was my choice of font 20 years ago, Comic Sans. Please don't judge. We created this document as a result of, well, let's call it way too many explorations in why it wouldn't work. So we felt we needed to document how it did. So we invented the 7 laws of words outline numbering. Of course, there were so many corollaries to the fact that we were discovering this within the legal community, hence the name, the 7 laws. And equally, can you believe this? We put in an entire set of defined terms in this document. And basically, let's just quickly review the laws. One, which is that numbering is a document property. I just want to remind everyone that as a human being, we believe numbering is associated to the paragraph on which it sits. But in Microsoft Word, that is not true. It lives in a paragraph marker, that is true, but it is the sort of godlike one at the end of the document. So numbering that's there before you start working in it, we're applying it, that is the governing property. And this was a very different thing for all of us coming from our prior solutions, or even today. It's a hard concept for people to grasp. The second one was that you should always create your numbering scheme inside the document before you do anything else. That 3, the most effective way to create and manipulate schemes is through styles. And 4, we would do this thing that it was kind of a habitual sort of cadence, I suppose, a chant of sorts, that the way we would have to modify our paragraph indents was through format, style, modify, format, numbering, customize. It was sort of like the word perfect home, home, home up thing, if any of you remember that. The next law was that each numbered level should have an appropriate style specified under link level to style. 6, that you should never choose an inactive view in the numbering list gallery. And 7, you should never assume that outline numbering has been correctly or consistently applied throughout the document. And I think you can already pick out some of the ones that have survived to this day. And we will give you that sort of markup here in a bit. So in the defined terms list, I just wanted to kind of go through this really quickly. We used a number of, think of them as metaphors or labels. Let's call them labels. We gave things labels because we felt that the technical description of how you get to a certain location through the UI of Microsoft Word was never going to be enough. And so as a consequence, we invented phrases that were metaphors or labels to make it kind of fun in the presentation of training. And so one of them was, with that format, style, modifying, format, numbering, customize, we called it the rabbit hole, that you had to go down the rabbit hole. And of course, that rabbit hole is a metaphor for the phrase inside of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, essentially an adventure into the unknown. And this was essentially what it looked like. This was the list gallery we had to go through. And fortunately, all of you know, it was deprecated out of the application in Word 2007 for every good reason, for every good or bad problem it caused. So we had no more unknown adventures down the rabbit hole as a result. The other thing that we used to refer to was the fact that you would have to dig to China. So I looked up the origin of that, and it was actually a Henry David Thoreau quote. And I really do believe that it related so well to how we described that, you know. But I think I shall not go out of my way to admire the whole which he made. And that's how many, again, challenges we had and still have to this day with numbering. The other thing is I wanted to give you all just a silly little background on the naming or nomenclature of the JSON tab. Please know that I was not the only author of the 7 laws. I worked with so many great people back in that era as we demystified this. And among them was my colleague, Tim Byrne. He is based in Boston, and he was trying so hard to explain to someone about this tab that just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. He said, it just reminds me of Friday the 13th and that guy Jason, who you keep killing all the time, and he keeps coming back for another sequel. And so that was how the Jason tab name was born, and it just had such prominence and applicability. People understood immediately once you gave it that name, and then that we, of course, let everyone know how to avoid it or fix it, and we even provided tools and docx tools, as you all know, to resolving it. One of the other things that I wanted to point out to you all, and this is, again, this is not history. This right here is really even current day. To this day, this book right here, Writing Word Macros, an Introduction to Programming Word Using VBA, it was published in, goodness, I don't even know how long ago, but this book and this chapter is the only technical documentation that ever existed on the list template. What we did have was a lot of anecdotal information, but for years and years and years, we could not, there was nothing. And this one book, the gentleman really worked hard with Microsoft and got this great chapter in it. And I have to laugh, we were talking about this being the 20-year anniversary. That book I purchased on March 24th of 2000. And as I said, it was the only book that really taught us all specifically about the list template and how that worked, and so that we could actually automate solutions to all of the problems. Now, at the time that we wrote this document, again, I want you all to kind of remember back if you were around, but this was a really tumultuous, transformative time in legal. And I point this particular thing out because history teaches us things. And so that will start to set up what we're going to talk about here next. And that is that at that juncture, it wasn't even really the internet, really. We certainly had websites and we had things like that, but we didn't have necessarily a mailing list to get a document to people. We didn't have a way to register people to download it. So we basically said, this is a community white paper. That's how we handed it out. We let the document fly free. And so what was fascinating about that fact is that we were in Redmond at Microsoft, a big legal community meeting, and the gentleman who was the product manager at Microsoft stood up there and did a David Letterman thing, the top 10 things that legal wants to have done in Microsoft Word. And the funny thing was, the Letterman goes through it or went through it kind of from 10, 9, 8. And so the second most requested feature in all of legal, and it appeared on a Microsoft slide in a big stage, was kill the JSON tab, fix the JSON tab. One of the other things I found fascinating about this document having let it fly free was that I found it on a website translated to German, and it always struck me, how on earth did they translate the rabbit hole or dig to China or any of the metaphors that we made up here in the States? And that was kind of fascinating. And one time I went into a life sciences account, specifically Merck, I should point out, and my colleagues introduced themselves, and then I walked up and introduced myself, and went to shake the gentleman's hand, and he held onto my hand, and he wouldn't let go. He said, "Oh my gosh, you're Sherry Capel. You wrote the 7 laws. You have saved my bacon for months on the documents that he was working on." And so again, I think that this is just a lesson about how sharing information that helps people in problem moments is a really important responsibility. And creating the training vocabulary and, setting up forensic courses, all of this came out of this one document. Equally, I will tell you that the late Marty Silverberg patterned ANOVA's numbering design and definition following the 7 laws, making sure that his numbering solution was designed to avoid all of those problems. And then, of course, as I said, analysis, repair tools, aspects of docx tools, which to this day help us and enable us in correcting issues of numbering and finding them, all inspired by, again, making this information freely available and having so many of us being troubled by it. So I wanted to mention something really quick because this is a point of the history. And that is that we revisited this topic, what are the new 7 laws, shall we say? And this was in New York. And this was when Microsoft had made a number of significant changes, notably around Word 2007, Word 2007. And what happened was they changed the UI, they finally deprecated things that were causing all of us trouble, and we wanted to make sure that it was known, right, once again. And at the same time, the New York Word Legal Users Group leader, Marcia Flowers, who worked at Cravath, is now retired. How she did this, I have no idea. But Marcia, in her just amazing tenacity, got Microsoft to come to our meeting. As a matter of fact, she even got Microsoft to host the meeting. And we used another metaphor at that point. We called it the Forrest Gump session by saying that numbering is a whole lot like a box of chocolates. You open it up and you never know what you're going to get. And I think that sort of holds true. But again, I wanted to mention Marcia because I'm going to have at the end of this a call to action to all of you to channel our inner Marcia and take a couple of steps to, shall we say, define the next 20 years. So what's the new view? What are the updates and the relevant best practices? So what we're going to talk about here is the fact that in the 7 laws, there are several of these things that have been eliminated. In other words, Microsoft did, as we all took them, the kind of insight that we had at the time. Laws 1 and 2 are almost, what shall I say? They are exactly the way it is, the way it stands. Nothing about those things has changed. I think Law 3, we need to rewrite because Law 3 said that the most effective way, this was us 20 years ago thinking, maybe just clicking and directly applying numbering is okay in certain circumstances. But I think what we have all realized, I think we can be a lot more forceful in it and say the only way in professional document production that you can define and apply outline number schemes is when they're linked to styles. And that is because it gives you all of the advantages related, table of contents, cross-referencing, tables of figure, every single thing is sort of that relationship between styles and the list itself is really critical to professional document production. Law 4 is no more. It doesn't exist. They thankfully took away the whole rabbit hole that we would all go down and the digging to China little approach we had to take. And also to point out, Law 6 was also nixed. Law 7 is once again it will live forever. I think that's the bottom line. We can never assume the outline numbering was correctly or consistently applied. I should say the way I always think of this is opposite of the U.S. court system where you're innocent until proven guilty. I think every document is the opposite. It's always guilty until we prove it innocent. Or correct it to be innocent. And so with that, let's move on to one of the best forensic tools that we have, and it was introduced once again in Word 2007. The reason what I've done here, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this and go to a couple of documents that I have set up, and I want to point it out. So in this document, I'm going to zoom it up a little bit for you all. I'm going to click on this number, which, by the way, that wasn't always the case. We could not, not forever could we right-click or even click on to select the number. Now we can. And, of course, that little adjust list indents, in so many ways I wish they would change its name. But in any case, adjust list indents is done by clicking on the number, whether bullet or number, right-clicking and saying adjust list indent. The dialogue that you get when you do this is going to tell you a ton about the numbering that is associated to that paragraph. So in this case, what we know about it is a bulleted list. And that's because you'll have this really sort of single list looking dialogue. Let's contrast that for a second to a numbered list that's linked to a style, adjust list indents. And once again, we get the very same, single list way of controlling only the indents. And so basically, that one law which says you always modify the indent of the paragraph through the list definition itself holds true. If this is linked to a style and I modify this indent to be, say, half an inch, what will happen is it will update the link style to match. But if I don't edit it through the list, I edit it through the paragraph, we end up with our troubles. Now, let's go to a different list. This happens to be one which is a multi-level list, and we know it because of the dialogue that comes up. You'll notice this is proper. Every single thing is linked to a style. And we'll also notice that we have, when we click more, we see exactly that link level to style right there. And this all says this is a good scheme. And once again, if we want to modify the indents, we do it through here. And what happens is it updates the style to match. Doing it the other way is never a good thing because it will always reset on you when you then go to either reapply or whatever. So again, those are all the single level list, a multi-level list, and we have one additional thing. When I right click on this one and I say adjust list indents, this is an entirely different kind of package for our multi-level list. This is called a list style. And unlike the actual list template or list object, as that chapter in the book implied, this happens to be a style. It is indeed also linked to a paragraph style, but it's in fact a style that we can copy and we can modify in our templates and basically kind of move it using the old organizer method. We can copy it from one place to the next. It's very shall we say, there's so many steps to get it done, but it's called a list style, and we won't see it in any way. We won't see it here in the Quick Styles gallery. The only place we're going to see it is here. We have a whole entire category letting us know what list styles are available. In fact, we may not even see this menu group if there are no list styles. If we just use, say, something from this list library or a list that we have done as a multi-level list, we'll see them in a different group, but we won't see them in that list style group. The list styles are unique. Now, what I want to tell you is that when these styles became incredibly well marketed, let's say, they were very faulty. They would lose their links. They really didn't copy. Every time you created one, you created two. And there were just a number of instabilities around them. And I will say that since, say, Office 2010, throughout all those versions, we've seen a lot of improvement in this. So this is one thing every one of us is keeping our eye on, is how much, is it stable enough for us all to support it with our numbering solutions, etc. I can tell you that in native word template design, a list style might be a really good approach for you. But again, we don't have enough time in this particular webinar to go through how they're different, how they're unique, and all of the details about it. But a list style is essentially a way to package not only the list definition, so is it Arabic 1 at the first level, is it Roman numeral 1 at the second level, etc., but it's also a way to package the list template or the list object in conjunction with all the paragraph styles that are associated. So that's a kind of a nice little advantage, is you package it all up and you've got this one thing that you have to copy from place to place. So I want to go back because on my slides, I do give you essentially the 1, 2, 3 in terms of how you identify what kind of scheme it is and the best methods for approaching it. Underneath the hood, seemingly these are all multi-level lists, but again, we all get different UI when we do this right click. This to me is the best way for you to understand consistency of the document, along with any tools such as docx tools to enable you. Now, I've always had this vision that I would create some kind of a graphic to picture this out on technically how it is designed and what are the differences. And this was my attempt using SmartArt. I need an illustrator is what I need, but in any case, there you go. This is essentially law number one, that in the document, you have a list template. And by the way, in some of our documents, as you all well know, we have dozens, but it has 9 levels to which 9 styles might be linked. In the case of, oops, not sure why that happened. Hold on, let me go back. Wow, my PowerPoint came out of show mode for some reason. Oh, actually, these are the images, so I know what I did. I put screen captures in there since I wasn't passing out the document. I put screen captures in there for your later reference. We'll give you this. Now, how is a list, a multi-level list different from a list style? In the case of that, the list style holds the list template plus the styles that are linked. And so it's kind of a situation where, you know, it's an additional object. And again, if you're creating natively, creating templates, the list style might be the way that you should work. So this is where we transition this. I should point out it has been 20 years. It has been 20 years since Marcia went to Microsoft and said, this is crazy. We need your help. You need to make modifications. And frankly, it was her advocacy on behalf of the New York Word Legal Users Group that got us all of the corrections. In fact, all those laws that are blanked out now, that happened because Marcia went to Microsoft, created a community groundswell, and Microsoft went ahead and took care of all of those shortcomings that made us go through and cause and create so much trouble. However, I have to say, if it's been 20 years since we last visited this and we are all still talking about this topic, it basically says not all the work has been done. So I am inviting this community to channel our inner Marcia and once again have our voice heard. So I had gone out as a result of the session we held in New York. We've recently worked with the UK Document Excellence Group to launch a US counterpart of the Document Excellence Group. And we talked about this topic there a few weeks back. And it occurred to me that we have something Marcia didn't have 20 years ago. And that is, we have all of our voices that can be counted in what is called Microsoft's, suggestion box in the sky. So if you go to Word's user voice site, that link at the bottom, and you type into the little search box, you type into the little search box the word re-architect, what you are going to find is a single entry there called re-architect multi-level numbered lists and multi-level bulleted lists. And they accurately reflect in there the fact that we haven't visited this in 20 years. In 20 years. And there's more work to be done, as I mentioned. So here is the user voice site. I found a couple of independent votes on independent things. So, we don't have enough levels, frankly. We shouldn't have a limit of 9. What we should be able to have is tie up also all of the supporting non-numbered paragraphs. We should have a level 1 and then a level 1 continued, but they should all be together, and we should be able to promote and demote in between a numbered and a non-numbered level. And here is poor Keisha, who's logged this express thing. We only have 2 people that have voted for it. It's just not, a large enough pool for Microsoft to pay attention. Increase the maximum number of multi-levels in a bulleted system. And then I found this gentleman's note. It said, re-architected because it's not been done forever. There's competing products that do it so much better. And I would encourage you all, go to the user voice site, please, and add your vote. But more importantly, I put in a comment and encourage you all not only to place your vote, but to indicate how many users you support, how much time every week, how many occasions every week you have to support this problem. And by the way, what's really nice about this is there are a couple of people who put some very specific things in here. But if what we do is we rally around such a comment, if we, as the US Document Excellence Group and the UK DEG, we put in the specificity like Kent did, I think, like Marcia, there's nothing that Microsoft can do but listen to us and deliver the fixes that we need and the enhancements that we need. It has been 20 years, and those things were fixed back in 2000. And again, I think Marcia taught us that history teaches us that if we rally our voice together, we can make improvements for the next 20 years, and quit wasting our time on this challenge, really. By the way, if you look through the user voice site, Steve, there are dozens of people who have this single voice that have said, we need to fix this and this and this and this. And what we need to do is we need to take this one request and all of us vote and all of us add our comments and the weight of our organizations behind it, because there are so many things that really need to be fixed. And that takes us to our questions.
Awesome. Sherry, great presentation as always. I learned a lot about numbering today, so I, for one, am really pleased. Let's see. I'm going to check the questions here, and then by all means, I'm going to go through the ones that have been submitted so far, but it is not too late to submit. First one comes in. This is from Massey. Sorry, let me just expand the window so I can look at this a little easier. So no matter what the type of numbering you apply, bullet, single list, or multi-level list, when you click in a numbered paragraph, only the single list icon is highlighted. Will that ever be fixed so that the correct icon is highlighted based on the type of numbering applied?
Oh my goodness. So let me mention to you all that during that visit we had with Microsoft back when we revisited this topic in 2000, we brought this up because the icons do not reflect accurately the state of the paragraph. And let's just say that what shall I say, Steve, the insight we were given, and this is also the reason why I'm just having such urgency for all of us to have this call to action. What we were told at that time is that there are underlying processes and services that run inside Microsoft Word. And until we were able to do, we as in Microsoft, was able to do a much more thorough rebuilding or re-architecting of it, that was something that could not be fixed. Equally, so couldn't, there's another place in the styles list or the styles gallery where we have a similar like refresh kind of issue. So again, I'm going to encourage you to go to that user voice site and either we log it in that same ticket, or what we do is we create our own, and then what we'll do is all of us will vote on it, because it is a ridiculous indicator light. It's like the bad indicator light on my 67 Cougar I used to have. So yes, it's bad, and it should be fixed. It's about time.
Awesome, Sherry. We actually have one more question, and it was from Julie. She asked if we're going to be sharing the slides after the presentation. The answer is yes. So everyone who attended, be on the lookout. I'll be sending out a link to the recording as well as Sherry's slides today, so you can reference those after the webinar. And that actually wraps it up for questions, which is perfect timing. We are right at the top of the hour. So I want to thank Sherry for a great presentation. And again, a special thanks to all of you for joining us today.
Thanks for voting. Look, Steve, they voted.
Exactly.
Someone voted.
Look at that.
Excellent.
And then last note would just be that we're going to have, this will be the last industry insights for the year, but we'll pick it up again, a series in January. And then we had Litera Microsystems has one last webinar starting in 2 weeks on the 20th. That'll be a look back at legal in 2018. So we hope you guys can all join us for that. Thanks again, Sherry, and thanks again to all of you for joining. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.